With just one signature, I'm erased from the life of the person I love, as if I never existed. The scent of oak and aged parchment filled the small law office, a space that looked like it had been forgotten by time. Lauren Blake sat in a stiff leather chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap, though her knuckles had gone white from the pressure. Her heart beat against her ribs like a prisoner begging to be let out. The door creaked behind her, and in walked Vivian Blake Royce, Noah's sister. Impeccable in a charcoal gray suit, her heels clicked sharply across the wooden floor. She offered Lauren a faint smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, then turned her attention to the lawyer. Lauren didn't speak. Not yet. Sophie, her 8-year-old daughter, was just a room away, humming softly to herself as she played with a puzzle. Lauren could hear the quiet joy in her voice, and it kept her anchored, just barely, to the moment. Mr. Carver, the family lawyer, cleared his throat and looked up from the paperwork. "I appreciate you both coming," he began, adjusting his glasses. "This is regarding the reading of Captain Noah Blake's final will and testament." The room felt smaller suddenly, the air heavier. Lauren took a breath. She'd prepared herself for grief, for legal jargon, maybe even for tension with Vivian, but she hadn't prepared for what came next. "The will we have on file, notarized under military procedure, assigns all personal and financial assets of the late Captain Blake to Vivian Royce Blake." Lauren blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Vivian's smile twitched into something colder. "There is no mention of you, Lauren," Mr. Carver said gently. "Or Sophie?" Lauren's voice came out hollow. "That doesn't make sense. Noah would never—" Vivian reached into her designer bag and pulled out a crisp, laminated document. "This," she said, placing it on the desk with practiced poise, "is a certified copy provided by the Department of Defense. He updated it 3 months before deployment." Lauren stared at the paper. Her eyes locked on the signature she knew so well. Noah James Blake. Her fingers trembled. "This can't be right." Vivian folded her arms. "Noah loved you, Lauren. That's obvious. But he changed his mind. Maybe he realized you weren't the right fit. For him, or for us." The words stabbed more deeply than Lauren expected. "Does that document say why?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Vivian leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was offering sympathy. "He didn't have to explain. Some people are phases. You might have just been one of them." Lauren stood up slowly. Her legs felt stiff, her heels suddenly too tall. She nodded once without speaking and turned toward the door. Mr. Carver called after her, hesitant. "Mrs. Blake, She paused in the doorway, the old hinges groaning as she looked over her shoulder. "Was I ever Mrs. Blake, Mr. Carver?" He had no answer. By the time Lauren returned home, Sophie had fallen asleep in the back seat. Her tiny fingers still clutched the corner of a picture book, face pressed to the window. Lauren carried her inside gently, laying her down on the couch and tucking a blanket around her. Then something caught her eye. Above the fireplace, where their wedding photo used to be. It was gone. In its place, taped clumsily and already curling at the corners, was a scanned copy of the military will. Her erasure, printed in black and white. Delivered, apparently, while she was out. No note? No explanation. She walked up to it slowly. Stared. Her hand reached into the pocket of her coat and closed around a soft piece of fabric. A handkerchief. Embroidered years ago with a childlike affection. L+N. Her thumb traced the stitching. Her husband's last words echoed in her mind like a whisper in an empty cathedral. "If you don't come back, I'll know what to do." She had come back. Every time. Every letter, every sleepless night waiting for news from overseas. Every tear she wiped before Sophie could see. She never stopped loving him. But now, in the cold silence of her home, all she could feel was a hollow where her name used to be, where wife used to mean something. Her identity wasn't lost. It was revoked. She stared at the will on the wall, her reflection blurred in the glass pane of a picture frame that no longer held them. And for the first time since Noah died, she didn't cry. She just stood there, shaking hands, dry eyes. What if someone wanted her out of the picture long before Noah's death? And now, with him gone, the plan is finally in motion. I once patched his chest in the rain of blood, but today, he avoided my eyes. The bar near the seal base wasn't much more than a box of smoke and stale beer, lit dimly by flickering yellow bulbs and washed in the melancholic hum of a country song that seemed too old even for the jukebox. Lauren pushed open the door, stepping into the scent of sweat, gun oil, and old regrets. Her coat still carried the chill of the evening air, but her pulse burned beneath it. She saw him instantly. Mark Delgado, hunched over a glass at the end of the counter. A man built like a freight train, now looking like he'd taken one head-on. He didn't notice her yet. Or maybe he did and pretended not to. She sat down beside him without asking. The bartender glanced at her, then away. Silent witness. Not his business. Delgado didn't turn. Lauren broke the silence. You still owe me that beer. He sipped without looking. Thought you forgot. No, she said. Hard to forget pulling shrapnel from your chest under fire. He gave a soft grunt. That was as close to a laugh as she'd get. Noah always said, she continued, you'd give me a case of beer someday. Delgado's hand froze. He set the glass down. Lauren leaned in slightly, her voice quiet but sharp. You were his closest friend. Don't pretend you don't know what just happened. Delgado turned his head slightly, not enough to meet her eyes. You shouldn't be here. I have nowhere else to be, she said. Noah's family made sure of that. Silence again. Lauren inhaled slowly, steadying herself. The will. The military document. It names Vivian. Not me. Not Sophie. You know that isn't right. He finally looked at her just for a moment. His eyes were tired. Too tired for someone still in his 30s. I'm out, he said. I'm not part of that world anymore. Don't drag me back into it. I'm not asking you to drag anything, she snapped. I'm asking you to tell me if I'm losing my mind. Tell me that Noah, her voice cracked, would ever do that to me. Look me in the eye and say it. Delgado looked down at his drink. The song on the radio changed. I can't, he muttered. Can't or won't. Delgado exhaled. Some things don't come with straight answers, Lauren. Some things we don't get to question. That's not good enough, she said, standing. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. If you won't help me, then just say it. Say I'm wrong. Say Noah wanted me gone. Delgado stood too, towering over her, but his eyes weren't angry. They were filled with something far worse. Remorse. He hesitated. Then, with a voice like sandpaper, he said, If Noah left anything behind, you'll have to find the right person to find out. Lauren stared at him. Who's the right person? But he was already walking away, heavy boots echoing across the floorboards like gunshots. He didn't look back. The bartender slid her a napkin with no drink. Just a nod. Lauren didn't bother to thank him. She walked out into the night air, the bitter cold sharpening her thoughts. The wind tugged at the edges of her coat, and for a moment she felt like a loose page in a story someone else was writing. Then, just as she reached for her car door, a weight pressed against her side. Startled, she turned. No one was there. She checked her pocket. An envelope. Unmarked. No name. No address. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it out. It was sealed, but worn, like it had passed through many hands before reaching her. Her name wasn't written, but this was meant for her. Of that, she was sure. She looked around once more. Nothing but empty street and humming streetlights. The mystery wasn't over. It was just beginning. Inside the envelope lies something unexpected. Not evidence, but a message. Encrypted, military style. Someone wants her to find the truth. But they're not making it easy. Evidence is not just in the files. It is in the hands of those who dare to keep the truth. The road to Jasper Creek twisted like a scar through the pine-covered hills, its silence broken only by the crunch of gravel beneath Lauren's tires. The mist hung low over the trees, giving the woods a haunted stillness that settled into her bones. The further she drove, the more the world behind her seemed to vanish. She turned off the main road, following the GPS signal linked to the handwritten address tucked into the envelope from last night. It felt surreal, following a breadcrumb trail that Noah might have set before his death. Every mile forward pressed into questions she still wasn't ready to answer. At the end of the dirt path stood a weathered cabin, nestled between two ancient oaks. Its roof sagged at one edge, and moss crept up its stone chimney like ivy grasping at time, the kind of place built for forgetting. She stepped out of the car, the cold air clinging to her skin. Leaves crunched beneath her boots as she approached the door. No sign of life. Just the faint scent of old smoke and earth. Lauren knocked. 3 times. Nothing. She waited. Knocked again. Still nothing. She leaned in close to the wood. "My name is Lauren," she said softly, voice trembling against the damp air. "I'm Noah's wife." A pause. Then the sound of metal grinding, an old lock disengaging, and the door creaked open. Inside stood a tall, bearded man in flannel and fatigue pants. His face was lined like an old map, the kind you could fold but never erase. "Rainer?" she asked. He nodded once. "You look like the kind of woman he'd marry." Lauren didn't know what that meant, but she took it as permission and stepped inside. The cabin smelled of pine, gun oil, and something older. Memory, maybe. War clung to the walls like soot. Photos in black and white. Metals collecting dust. A folded flag in a glass case. Rainer gestured to a seat near the fire. "You came far." "I didn't know where else to go," she said, settling in. He sat across from her, quiet, watching. Lauren pulled something from her coat pocket. A soft piece of cloth. She laid the handkerchief on the table between them. The initials L+N gleamed faintly in the firelight. Rainer's expression didn't change, but his hand trembled slightly as he reached for the drawer beside him. He pulled out a small wooden box, polished but aged, with Noah Blake's name engraved across the top. The hinges creaked as he turned it toward her. Carved into the lid, simple and unmissable. "If I don't return, give this to Lauren." Lauren's breath caught. Her fingers hovered above the box like it might vanish if touched too suddenly. Then she lifted the lid. Inside, a small USB stick, a sealed envelope, and a folded piece of paper worn at the edges. She unfolded it slowly. Noah's handwriting. Sharp, deliberate. "Don't let silence defeat the truth." She stared at the note, her eyes blurring with tears. Her lips moved but made no sound. "He gave this to me a week before deployment," Rainer said finally. Didn't say much, just handed it over and said, "If something goes wrong, she'll come. She'll need it." Lauren's voice cracked. "He knew." Rainer nodded. "He always did." She closed the box carefully, holding it like something sacred. Her phone buzzed quietly in her coat. A call from Sophie. She answered immediately. "Hi, sweetheart." "Mom, are you coming home soon? I made you something." Lauren smiled through the tears. "Yeah, baby, I'm coming home." "I miss Daddy today," Sophie whispered. "I know," Lauren said, voice raw. "Me too." The sky was bleeding into dusk by the time Lauren pulled into her driveway. She moved quickly, her fingers aching to know what was on the USB, yet terrified of what it might reveal. She slid it into the laptop's port and waited. A single file appeared. Blake. Final Testament 2024.mp4. Her breath hitched. She clicked play. The screen flickered to life. Noah's face filled the frame. Alive. Real. He looked tired but resolute. The same black t-shirt he always wore when speaking from base. Lauren reached for the edge of the table to steady herself. He opened his mouth and spoke. Noah's video isn't just a will. It's a warning. A name is mentioned. A threat is made clear. And Lauren realizes this was never just about money. "You didn't come back, but you left me your last words before I even knew I needed them." The kitchen was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Outside, the wind sighed through the trees, rustling the leaves like whispers between ghosts. Lauren sat at the small wooden table, the box from Jasper Creek still beside her. The laptop screen glowed pale blue in the darkness, casting soft light across her face. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. Sophie had finally fallen asleep after asking once more if Daddy could see her dreams. Lauren had kissed her forehead and promised, yes, every night. Then she came downstairs and inserted the USB. One file. Blake. Final Testament 2024.mp4. Her hand trembled slightly as she clicked on it. The screen blinked. A loading bar. Then a breath. His. And there he was. Noah. Sitting tall in his military uniform, the insignia crisp on his chest. The background was nondescript. Maybe a barracks office or briefing room, but it didn't matter. The only thing that existed in that moment was his face. His eyes, gentle, steady, focused like he was looking straight at her. He smiled softly, but it didn't reach his eyes. If you're watching this, Lauren, I didn't come back. Lauren's breath hitched. I didn't record this as a part of protocol. This isn't the government's version. It's mine. Because I don't trust paperwork, and I don't trust the people who handle it when I'm gone. He paused, then continued. First things first. You are my wife. Legally, emotionally, spiritually. There's no version of me, living or dead, that doesn't belong to you. Tears blurred Lauren's vision, but she didn't blink. She couldn't. Sophie is my daughter, my legacy. Everything I fought for is in her smile. Don't let anyone tell her otherwise. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. I made arrangements, real ones, but I've seen how wills disappear, how names are erased. That's why I'm leaving this behind. From just off camera, he lifted something into view. A handkerchief. L+N, embroidered faintly in white thread. You once gave this to me after patching me up during training. I kept it. Not because it was neat, but because it reminded me of the only thing that ever truly saved me. I don't carry the national flag in my heart. I carry the symbol of the love I chose. You, Lauren. I chose you. Lauren clutched her own handkerchief in her lap now, identical and worn by time. Her tears finally fell. Quiet, hot, sacred. If I don't come back, Noah continued, please don't let them rewrite our story. Vivian, she's strong, calculating, and I'm not blind to what she's capable of. I didn't tell you everything because I thought I had time. I thought coming home meant fixing things, but in case I was wrong. He exhaled hard, jaw tightening. This message. This is your proof. That we were real. That you were never just a phase. That Sophie is not a mistake to be scrubbed from a record. He looked directly into the lens. They'll come with papers, with lawyers, with lies. Let them. You carry the truth. Lauren covered her mouth, trying to hold the sob in, but it escaped anyway, raw and shaking. Noah closed his eyes for a second, then opened them again, softer this time. Tell Sophie. I love her. Every version of her. Even the one that doesn't remember me clearly. And you, Lauren, you were my home in every war. If you're still standing, then so am I. The screen faded to black. No end credits, no signatures. Just silence. Lauren sat frozen, the tears falling freely now. But they weren't from grief. Not this time. They were for something else. For the first time since the funeral, she felt steady. Real. Seen. She picked up her phone with new resolve, scrolled through her contacts, and pressed call. The line rang once. Carver Law Office. This is Lauren Blake, she said, voice clear. We need to reopen Noah Blake's estate case. I have new evidence. A video will... There was a pause on the other end. Yes, ma'am. We'll schedule immediately. She ended the call and looked back at the screen. The glow had dimmed, but her heart was lit with something powerful. Not anger, not fear. Proof. She whispered toward the darkness as if he could hear her through it. I won't let you be forgotten. But Noah's warning wasn't just emotional. It was strategic. As Lauren returns to the lawyer, she finds that someone already knew about the USB and wants it buried. Fast. They walked in, like the whole squad carrying late justice. The Galveston County Courthouse smelled of old books, floor polish, and cold stone, like time had settled here and never moved again. Lauren sat straight in her chair, her palms pressed against the stiff fabric of her dress pants. Every muscle in her body was taut, as though she were holding herself together with invisible thread. In the gallery behind her, Sophie sat quietly beside the babysitter, swinging her legs, too young to understand, but old enough to sense tension. Vivian Blake Royce sat across the aisle. Her hair was perfect, her pearl earrings catching the light each time she tilted her chin upward, an image of poised confidence. She hadn't looked Lauren in the eyes once. The judge, a woman with sharp glasses and sharper words, adjusted her robe and turned to the counsel table. We're here to examine the legal will of the late Captain Noah James Blake, she announced. Ms. Royce, as executor, you may proceed. Vivian's attorney stood smoothly, placing a thick bound document on the evidence table. Your Honor, we present the military-certified last will and testament of Captain Blake, signed and notarized, stamped with the Department of Defense insignia. All assets, as per this document, are to be transferred to Vivian Royce Blake. Lauren said nothing. Her lawyer, a quiet man named Hughes, leaned toward her and whispered, "If you're sure about this." "I am," she said. The judge turned toward her. "Mrs. Blake, do you have any counter-evidence to present today?" The courtroom fell into a hushed pause. Lauren opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, the doors opened. The echo of boots on tile, measured, heavy, deliberate, cut through the silence. 6 men walked in side by side, uniformed, clean-cut, SEALs. At their center was Chief Mark Delgado, holding a familiar wooden box in both hands. His expression unreadable, but his eyes locked with Lauren's for the first time since that night at the bar. She gave him a nod. They walked with purpose, forming a line just behind Lauren's table like a wall of silent truth. Delgado stepped forward and spoke directly to the judge. "Permission to submit primary testimony on behalf of Captain Blake, ma'am." The judge blinked, surprised. "Who are you?" "Chief Warrant Officer Mark Delgado. I served under Captain Blake for 6 years." She hesitated, then nodded. Delgado opened the box. Inside, carefully placed, was the same USB Lauren had watched 2 nights ago. The one Noah recorded for her. For this moment. Hughes retrieved a laptop and projector from his briefcase. "We request to play a recorded testament from Captain Blake, dated March 2024. Vivian stood abruptly. "Your Honor, this is irregular. The will we submitted is legally certified. So let's hear what the dead man himself has to say." The judge interrupted, her voice dry. "Play it." The lights dimmed slightly. The courtroom fell still. The screen flickered. And Noah appeared. Alive, proud, in uniform. "If you're watching this, I didn't make it home." Every breath in the courtroom stopped. This video is not government-sanctioned. It's personal, because I've learned that not all battles happen on the battlefield. Lauren held her breath. "I, Noah James Blake, declare that all of my personal and financial assets belong to my wife, Lauren, and our daughter, Sophie. No exceptions." Vivian went rigid. Her hand gripped the arm of her chair. "You might find another will. One stamped and signed by the system I no longer trusted. But this is the truth. My voice. My words. My will." He held up the handkerchief, L+N, just as he had in her kitchen. "I carry this, not because it's a military issue, but because it's hers. I belong to my family, not anyone else." Then he leaned closer. "If I don't come back, don't let them rewrite our story. My brothers know who I am, and they will not abandon me." The 6 SEALs behind Lauren stood a little taller. "I didn't die to be forgotten, and I didn't leave them behind." The video ended. Silence. Total, aching silence. Then a sound. Lauren's breath catching in her throat. The tears came, but this time she didn't hide them. They weren't just hers. In the back row, Sophie tilted her head. "That's Daddy." Vivian stood, her face pale. I need to see that evidence again. It could be manipulated." The judge raised a hand. "I've seen enough." Vivian sank slowly back into her seat, stunned. Lauren looked at the judge, heart pounding. The judge turned toward her, nodding once. "Captain Blake's video is compelling, direct, and verified through testimony from these men who served with him. This court recognizes its authority. Mrs. Blake, you and your daughter are hereby reinstated as the sole heirs of the estate." Delgado placed a hand on Lauren's shoulder, firm and silent. Lauren turned to him, eyes wet but unbroken. "Thank you." He didn't speak. He just nodded. Outside, as the court emptied and cameras began to flash beyond the doors, Lauren stood at the top of the courthouse steps. Sophie ran to her and grabbed her hand. And behind her, 6 soldiers stood, not just to honor the dead, but to defend the living. But justice is never the end. It's the beginning. A strange call comes that night. Someone wants to make things right, and requests to meet Lauren alone. I don't win. I restore the sun cast golden light across the courthouse steps, warming the stone beneath Lauren's shoes. She stood still for a long moment, hand in Sophie's, her heart quieter than it had been in months. Not empty, just steady. Vivian had disappeared quickly after the ruling, slipping past reporters with her lawyer shielding her from the press. Days later, a headline flickered across every newsfeed. Forgery investigation launched into Royce Blake filing. Sources say will was tampered. Vivian's empire of whispers had begun to collapse, brick by forged brick. Lauren hadn't pressed charges. She hadn't needed to. She'd made one request: a public statement under oath confirming the military-filed will had been falsified and that she, Lauren, was and had always been Noah's wife. Vivian delivered it on live camera. Justice didn't always wear armor. Sometimes it just sounded like the truth. Finally spoken aloud. Weeks passed. Spring rolled in with the scent of magnolia and renewal. Lauren moved quietly, without ceremony, into a modest house just outside Houston. Not extravagant, not flashy. Just home. In the kitchen, a new routine had taken root. Sophie poured cereal into her bowl with practiced independence while Lauren prepared coffee nearby. "Mom," Sophie said, her voice small and focused as she unfolded a letter in careful hands. "Can I read it now?" Lauren turned, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Yes, baby," she said gently. "He wrote it just for you." The letter had arrived in a final box delivered from Delgado. Inside had been Noah's watch, his journal, a faded photo of Sophie in pigtails, and one sealed envelope with careful script. For Sophie, when the dust clears. Sophie opened it with reverence, tracing each word with her fingertip as she read aloud. "My dearest sunshine, if you're reading this, it means you're growing, learning, and strong enough to hold my words without breaking. I may not be beside you when you read them, but know this: I never left. I watched your first steps. I felt your laughter from across oceans. I carried a photo of you in every deployment and kissed it before every mission. You are not a shadow of me. You are the best of me. And I hope one day when you miss me, you'll smile instead of cry. Because I'm with you. Always." Sophie paused. Her bottom lip trembled. Then she looked up. "Daddy never left me, right?" Lauren stepped closer, kneeling beside her. "No," she said softly, cupping her daughter's cheek. "Never." They held each other in a long silence, the letter trembling slightly between them, but the grief no longer crushed. It simply lived, like a quiet part of love. Later that week, Lauren stood before a small gathering beneath a white banner, the Anchor Fund, honoring children of fallen soldiers. A podium, a plaque bearing Noah's name. Cameras, yes, but this time not for scandal, for legacy. "I lost more than a husband," Lauren said to the crowd. "I lost part of myself, but I didn't come here today to talk about loss. I came to talk about rebuilding." She glanced toward Sophie in the front row, flanked by Delgado and his team in full uniform. "This fund will sponsor education for children who carry invisible flags on their backs, the ones whose parents never made it home, but whose stories will. Because memory is not enough. We owe them a future." She stepped down to applause, but what filled her wasn't pride. It was purpose. Anchored. At last. That night, back at home, Sophie had already fallen asleep in her new room, her father's letter tucked beneath her pillow. Lauren walked into the study. She opened a drawer, pulled out a small triangular case. Inside, the folded American flag from Noah's funeral. She set it gently on the desk. Then, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a soft, time-worn square of fabric. The handkerchief. L+N, stitched in quiet defiance. She laid it gently on top of the flag. Her hands lingered for a moment. Then she whispered into the quiet. "I kept my promise, Noah." The wind outside brushed against the windows like breath. The past no longer haunted this house. It had made peace here. And Lauren Blake, once erased, was rewritten. Not just as widow, not just as mother, but as a woman who had taken back what was hers. Weeks later, an unsigned letter arrives at the Anchor Fund. "You're doing good work, but some ghosts don't like light. Be careful who you trust." They tried to erase her name, rewrite her life, and silence the truth. But they didn't count on her fighting back with grace and fire. What began as betrayal in a courtroom ended as a quiet triumph written in the voice of justice itself. Because justice isn't always loud. It arrives when someone dares to stand where silence used to be. Like the final chord of a forgotten song, truth may come late, but once heard, it never fades. Sometimes all it takes is one woman refusing to disappear. If you believe justice matters, like, share, and comment your thoughts. Drop a 1 below if this story moved you.